Hello there, it's Sandeep, and in this video I'm going to go over a position in the Ruy Lopez Classical Defence where 93.5% of players across the entire Lichess database in a given position failed to find the strong continuation for white. And so let's get to it. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, the Ruy Lopez, one of the most common openings in chess. And now the game can go in many directions. You can have a6, the Morphy, d6, the Steinitz, knight f6, the Berlin. But the position I'm talking about at the top requires the classical defense, so bishop c5, and now c3 is a top move, knight f6, and now comes d4. And so in this position, everything is fine for both sides. Black really needs to take the pawn though. And so what happens when you take the pawn? E takes d4, e takes d4, e5, knight d5, c takes d4, bishop b4, check, knight e2. And the position is equal, but you can kind of see why this might be annoying for players with the black pieces, because white has these two strong central pawns. And so what some players do in this position after d4 is play the move bishop b6, but this is a mistake. And so if you let Stockfish calculate deep enough, the evaluation goes to about plus 1.5, close to 2. And you can see here in the Lichess database, so this is everyone, not just not master level players. People do things like they castle, they play d takes e5, they play d5, they play bishop takes c6. But the strongest move in this position is the move knight takes e5. And you can see knight takes e5 was played only 6.5% of the time. So this is what I was referring to at the top. 93.5% of players are not finding this move. And when knight takes e5 is played, you can see white's win rate is very high. It's 70%. We'll look into why that is. So after knight takes e5, this knight here is just too strong. It needs to be removed. You can't play a move like d6 because that's a huge blunder. Obviously, after knight takes c6, b takes c6, bishop takes c6, black has blundered a rook. And so black just really needs to take. And that's the top move. Knight takes e5, d takes e5, white is up temporarily a pawn. The best continuation for black is to play the move knight takes e4. And so what's remarkable about this position is that there is a double attack here on this f2 pawn. And many times in positions like this, either black is equal or black is winning. But it turns out that this threat of taking on f2 is a paper tiger, and white is actually still winning here. And so many players in this position are going to castle. But there is a much stronger move here, which is the move queen g4. And that's kind of badass move. It's basically saying this check is completely useless. You can go ahead and deliver it. And so after bishop takes f2, which I think is the strongest move here for black, king takes e2, you have a situation where, yes, black is up a pawn. But this knight is hanging, and this g7 pawn is hanging as well. And so how do you defend both? You can't really. So the strongest move is to play the move queen h4, which defends the knight, and obviously the queen is defended by the bishop. And amazingly, here, white can just go ahead and take the pawn on g7. And you have a remarkable position here in chess where the king is on e2, and there are 3 black pieces surrounding the white king, including the queen. And yet there is no threat. And so black's rook on h8 is hanging. And there is only one good move here, which is to play the move rook f8. If, for example, if black tries to deliver some check, queen h5 check, this is a blunder because after g4, the queen is hanging, the rook is hanging. And let's say after queen g6, queen takes h8. Obviously, white is in a completely winning position. So rook f8 is the only good move. But after rook f8, you have bishop h6, which threatens mate. And again, if you try something with the black pieces, so you say queen h5 check, that's obviously a huge blunder, g4. And now you either have to give up the queen or you're going to get checkmated. And so the best move here is just queen takes bishop and queen takes queen, and obviously white is completely winning. So how do you stop mate in this position after bishop h6. And so there are two moves. You could play queen e7, which is the second best move, but that is still losing. So after queen e7, you just go ahead and take the rook. Queen takes f8, queen takes f8, bishop takes f8, king takes f8, and black is giving up the exchange. You count the material, white is +2, white is winning. A better move for black in this position is to play the move bishop c5. And what makes this variation even more remarkable is that queen f2 check is not useful. So white can just go ahead and play the move knight d2. And now after queen f2 check, king d1, how does black make progress? This knight is hanging, and there's no mate threat here because obviously the bishop guards. And so there's no useful square for this knight to go, so you just take, knight takes d2, bishop takes d2, and now the problem is that this rook is sliding over to f1, and the position is going to get very dangerous for black. And so let's say something like a6, rook f1, queen h4. A very, very strong continuation in this position is the move e6. And obviously d takes e6 is an illegal move because the bishop has pinned the pawn. And if black chooses to ignore this and just says, okay, here's a free bishop, a takes b5, then after e takes f7 check, king d8, bishop g5, black has lost its queen. Alternatively, after rook takes f7, queen takes f7 check, king d8, now comes the move queen g8 check. You obviously cannot play the move bishop f8 because after queen takes f8 is checkmate. You have to play this awkward move king e7. But if you play king e7, then you have bishop g5, and similar to before, black has lost its queen. So there's no way in which black can ignore this threat after e6. So black really needs to take. So f takes e6, and now comes a very strong continuation, bishop h6. And again, you have a situation where black cannot ignore the mating 2 threat. So as an example, a takes b5, then obviously black is going to get checkmate. Rook takes f8, bishop takes f8, queen takes f8, checkmate. And so black has nothing better to do than to just take this rook here on f1, check, bishop takes f1. And even in this position, you have a mate in 2 threat. So the problem is after queen g8, check, bishop f8, queen takes f8 is checkmate. So how do you prevent checkmate? Queen e7 is a huge blunder because after queen g8, the only way to block that is to play the move queen f8, and obviously you take the queen, and white is completely winning. So black in this position has to play the very awkward move. Has to play the very awkward move d5, and that gives the king an escape square on d7. And you can see how this is just losing for black because this bishop is not in the game, this rook is not in the game, this bishop is actually stuck behind its own pawn chain. And so, you know, what can black do in this position? So after bishop e2, the problem for black is if white can deliver this check, then basically black is completely lost. And so as an illustration, if you have something like bishop d7, then you have the winning move bishop g5, and this queen cannot really move because, let's say, for example, queen e4, bishop h5 check. How do you block? Well, queen g6 and takes, and queen g8 check, bishop f8, and queen g6 checkmate. So the only way black can try and hold this position is to play the move queen e7. But even here, the situation is quite dangerous for black, and black needs to play very precisely in order to stay in the game. And so this is something you can study on your own. But if we zoom out and we go back to that original position in the classical defense, so after d4, players are going to play the move bishop b6. Some players will play the move bishop b6. And here, just remember to take this pawn on e5 with your knight. And that is a very, very strong move, which the vast majority of players in the Lichess database fail to see. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you have any comments on that, do leave them below. Thank you very much for your time.